68 million years ago, in the vast, lush, and semi-tropical plains of North America, an unstoppable force of nature was on the prowl. The legendary Tyrannosaurus rex, towering over its prey at over 10 tons, with a bite so powerful it could crush bone like a soda can, and senses so sharp it could spot movement from miles away. The T-Rex was, without question, the last thing you'd want to cross paths with. Forget being the king of the dinosaurs. This beast was nature's ultimate nightmare fuel. Now, if you think you could just hide and wait it out, the T-Rex had vision that was up to 13 times sharper than a human. Which means if you moved, even slightly, it saw you. So, let's say you're somehow teleported back to late Cretaceous North America. We've all seen Jurassic Park, so it's not that far-fetched. Your survival instinct kicks in, and you know one thing for certain: run. But run where? Water is a no-go, since you'd be a prime snack for ancient crocodiles and marine monsters. Heading south, bad idea. There, you'd run into another gang of nightmare-inducing predators known as the Able of Swords, a vicious group of theropods that didn't exactly welcome strangers. So, you might think, okay, let's go north. It's colder and big. Scary reptiles hate the cold, right? Wrong. In fact, heading north would be the last mistake you'll ever make, because lurking in the shadows of the Arctic wilderness was a predator that could give the T-Rex a run for its money. A beast with just as much bite, just as much power, and the same terrifying family name. This was Nanosaurus, a polar tyrannosaur that ruled the Arctic like a frosty king on an icy throne. Here's the wild part. The discovery of Nanosaurus was a complete stroke of luck. In 2006, paleontologists were exploring one of the most remote, desolate, and freezing places on Earth, the Prince Creek Formation in Alaska, a site hundreds of miles from any city or settlement. While battling freezing temperatures and rough terrain, they stumbled upon something that would change everything: fragments of a dinosaur skull. Not just any fragments, though. They found a right maxilla, part of the skull roof, and a left dentary, basically key parts of the upper and lower jaw. At first glance, it looked familiar. At first, paleontologists assumed they had found one of two well-known dinosaurs, either an Albertosaurus or a Daspletosaurus, two well-documented members of the Tyrannosaur family. But something didn't add up. The structure of the bones had subtle differences significant enough to hint that they weren't just looking at a northern cousin of these theropods. They were looking at something entirely new, a brand new genus. This discovery was monumental. Until that point, it was believed that tyrannosaurs thrived mainly in warmer climates, but Nanosaurus shattered that idea. It was now clear that these apex predators weren't just kings of tropical jungles and temperate plains. They could also reign in the unforgiving cold of the Arctic. The tyrants of the north were tougher, more adaptable, and far more widespread than anyone had ever imagined. It wasn't just about survival, it was about domination. So, the next time you think about the Arctic as an empty, frozen wasteland, once upon a time, it was the hunting ground of one of the most fearsome dinosaurs to ever live. And if you were hoping to escape the jaws of a T-Rex by heading north, well, you'd be running straight into the jaws of its colder, deadlier cousin. At first, scientists thought they had a familiar face on their hands. The initial analysis of the fossil fragments suggested it was just another member of the Tyrannosaur club, maybe an Albertosaurus or Daspletosaurus. But as the research progressed and the bones were more carefully studied, a stunning realization hit them. They weren't dealing with a known species at all. In fact, this creature was so different that it didn't just qualify as a new species. It earned the title of an entirely new genus. Because of its frigid homeland, it was given the name Nanosaurus, meaning polar bear lizard. And believe me, this was no cuddly bear. The idea of a brand new Arctic tyrannosaur was wild enough to grab headlines, but it didn't stop there. The discovery of Nanosaurus sparked an even bigger debate. How was it related to the one and only Tyrannosaurus rex? As it turns out, pretty closely. Paleontologists found that, based on its skull structure and overall body design, Nanosaurus was possibly one of T-Rex's closest relatives, second only to Daspletosaurus. This connection earned it a spot in the exclusive Tyrannosaurianae subfamily, a group known for its heavy, muscular builds and big, bulky heads, the kind of head you'd never want to see barreling toward you. But this raised another big question. Where did Nanosaurus come from? Was it always a local predator of the Arctic, or did it migrate from somewhere else? Two main theories have emerged, and both are fascinating. The first theory suggests that it could be a descendant of a North American tyrannosaur that gradually migrated north and adapted to the harsh, icy environment. The second theory proposes that it's actually a migrant from Asia, crossing over the Bering Land Bridge during the late Cretaceous, when the continents were connected. Support for the second theory grew stronger with the discovery of a smaller tyrannosaur from China called Asia tyrannus, a deer-sized predator with a skull eerily similar to that of Nanosaurus. This resemblance was too striking to ignore, leading some experts to speculate that Asia tyrannus might be the direct ancestor of Nanosaurus. But of course, nothing in paleontology is ever that simple. While the similarities between Asia tyrannus and Nanosaurus are undeniable, the Arctic tyrant still had a lot in common with its southern cousin, the T-Rex. Like its more famous relative, Nanosaurus had an S-shaped neck, short, muscular arms, a wide, thick skull, and a build that prioritized raw power over speed. This set it apart from members of the Albertosaurus, which had leaner, more agile bodies. But while Nanosaurus was similar to T-Rex in many ways, it had some features that were all its own. For one, it was smaller, though small here is relative. While T-Rex was a true giant, Nanosaurus was still a formidable predator. It grew up to 20 feet 6 meters long and weighed in at about 1 ton, making it one of the largest Arctic predators of its time. Think of it like this: bigger than a polar bear, smaller than a T-Rex, but still very much a nightmare for anything that crossed its path. Its teeth were also different, narrower, more deeply set, and sharp like blades. If that wasn't intimidating enough, it also had bony ridges above its eyes that gave it a permanent scowl, like a predator that was always in a bad mood. On top of all that, living in the Arctic may have given Nanosaurus another unique advantage: feathers. Scientists have long speculated that many theropods were covered in feathers, and since Nanosaurus lived in a cold environment, it's possible that it had a full coat of feathers to survive the harsh winter. While no direct feather evidence has been found for Nanosaurus itself, paleontologists have discovered a close relative from Asia, E. Tyrannus, that lived in a similar climate and was confirmed to be covered in feathers. If Nanosaurus followed suit, it may have had a thicker, fluffier coat to handle the cold, and there's even a chance it had lighter colored feathers, helping it blend into the snow, similar to a polar bear's fur. Now, picture this: a 20-foot, 1-ton predator covered in pale feathers, slowly moving through a blizzard. From a distance, you might mistake it for a large polar bear, that is, until it got close enough for you to see its sharp teeth, predator's glare, and clawed feet. There would be no mistaking it then. The Nanosaurus was a force of nature, an apex predator adapted for survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth. And while it wasn't quite the size of a T-Rex, it was every bit as terrifying for the animals that called the Arctic home. When Nanosaurus was first discovered, scientists thought they had its size figured out. Based on initial estimates, it was believed to be a medium-sized predator, comparable to a Ceratosaurus. But in a rare twist for paleontology, later research revealed they were way off. Turns out, Nanosaurus was actually 3 times bigger than originally thought. Recent studies show that, instead of being medium-sized, it was more on par with the mighty Albertosaurus. That puts this Arctic behemoth at an impressive 9 meters 30 feet long, with a weight of around 3 tons. Suddenly, it wasn't just another predator. It became the largest land carnivore in Arctic history, possibly even the largest land predator to ever roam a polar region. But wait, it gets better. Some paleontologists believe that Nanosaurus could have grown even larger under the right conditions. Some estimates suggest it could reach over 10 meters 35 feet in length, making it comparable to the largest known Daspletosaurus specimen. If this holds true, Nanosaurus would have made one of the biggest glow-ups in paleontology history, from being labeled as a mid-tier tyrannosaur to being one of the most colossal predators of its time. Imagine thinking you're dealing with a wolf and realizing you've got a grizzly bear-sized monster on your hands. With this new reputation as an apex predator, Nanosaurus would have had free reign over its ecosystem, capable of hunting practically any dinosaur it encountered. Nothing would have been safe, not even the armored herbivores that often relied on size and strength to defend themselves. And if being big wasn't enough, it had one of the most fearsome weapons in nature, the tyrannosaur bite. Like all members of its family, Nanosaurus had a massive, bone-crushing skull with rows of terrifying teeth. Its head wasn't just large, it was wide, heavily muscled, and reinforced for extreme power. Unlike the longer, narrower skulls of other theropods, Nanosaurus' skull was built like a sledgehammer, prioritizing raw, crushing force over slicing speed. But here's the kicker: as paleontologists reanalyzed its anatomy, they found that the head had grown larger than they initially thought, with increases in both mass and structure. This change hinted at a stronger bite force than originally assumed. Since no one has been able to measure its bite directly, researchers have had to rely on comparisons with other similar-sized tyrannosaurs. Estimates for bite forces in the tyrannosaur family range from 10,000 to a jaw-shattering 40,000 Newton, with Gorgosaurus on the higher end. To put that in perspective, that's about 2.5 times more powerful than the bite of a modern crocodile, which is already one of the most powerful bites on Earth today. So, while no one can say the exact number for Nanosaurus, one thing is clear: if it bit you, you wouldn't survive to tell the story. And it wasn't just about bite strength, it was about technique. While most predators kill their prey with precision strikes, Nanosaurus plays dirty. When it latched onto its victim, it would first crush bones and shred muscle, using its immense jaw power to bite down with the force of a hydraulic press. But it didn't stop there. After the initial bite, it would twist its head, yank, and pull away large chunks of flesh and bone, leaving behind catastrophic, gaping wounds. Imagine taking an eraser to a page and scrubbing out an entire section. That's what a single bite from Nanosaurus would do to a living creature. With each bite, it essentially erased entire chunks of its prey's body. And if that wasn't brutal enough, its teeth were custom built for destruction. While they were a bit smaller than those of T-Rex, that doesn't mean they were small. These teeth were still giants in their own right, with the largest ones measuring over 10 centimeters for inches tall. But what made them especially nasty was their design. Each tooth had a curved, hook shape that made it impossible for prey to wriggle free once bitten. If that wasn't bad enough, the teeth were serrated, like nature's version of a steak knife. This design allowed Dinosaurs to slice through layers of muscle, skin, and bone all at once, with minimal resistance. For any dinosaur caught in those jaws, escape was a distant dream. With this kind of arsenal, Dinosaurs wasn't just another predator, it was a one-dinosaur wrecking crew. It didn't just survive in the Arctic, it ruled it. Based on what scientists know about the animals and its environment, its menu was as large as its bite. It likely hunted herbivorous dinosaurs like hadrosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, and ceratopsids horned dinosaur. However, one name comes up more than any other when discussing its prey: Tyrannosaurus. This large, thick-skulled ceratopsid is often depicted in documentaries and artwork as being chased down by a pack of Dinosaurs. While there's no direct evidence of pack hunting, this portrayal isn't entirely baseless. Paleontologists know that some tyrannosaurs were social hunters, so it's not a stretch to believe Dinosaurs may have teamed up with its own kind to hunt larger prey. All things considered, Dinosaurs went from being a modest mid-sized carnivore to one of the most feared predators of the Arctic, a super predator that lived in the most extreme conditions on Earth. Bigger than a polar bear, stronger than a crocodile, and equipped with tools that could obliterate its prey, this dinosaur didn't just survive in the Arctic, it thrived. Despite the thrilling image of a Dinosaurus pack on the hunt, the truth is, there's no direct evidence that it lived or hunted in groups. The idea likely came from outdated assumptions based on its previously smaller size. However, some paleontologists still argue that it might have had a preference for living alongside its own kind. And honestly, it makes sense. Living in the unforgiving Arctic wasn't exactly a solo adventure. Traveling in packs could have made hunting easier, as multiple hunters meant more eyes, more teeth, and fewer failed hunts. Plus, during the bone-chilling winter, having companions to huddle with could have been the difference between life and death. Another reason paleontologists entertain the pack theory is for the sake of the juvenile survival. Growing up in a frozen, storm-ravaged wasteland wasn't easy, and having adults around could have helped young Dinosaurs stay alive long enough to reach adulthood. But here's the brutal reality. Most of them didn't make it. Fossil evidence shows that a shocking number of juvenile specimens have been found compared to adults, suggesting that many younglings didn't live long. And here's the wildest part. No one has ever found a fully mature Dinosaurus fossil. It seems that only the toughest of the tough survived long enough to become adults. Even crazier than that is the revelation that Dinosaurs could have chosen to suffer voluntarily. Instead of migrating to warmer climates like other animals do, they stayed in the Arctic all year round. Fossil evidence suggests that these dinosaurs stuck it out through the harshest winters, never leaving their icy homeland. It's a bold move, and one that likely came with extreme consequences. Imagine choosing to live in a place where even the nice summer days only reached about 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, colder than modern-day Anchorage, Alaska. And in winter, it only got worse. Average temperatures dropped to minus 3 degrees Celsius, 26 degrees Fahrenheit, about the same as a household freezer. But the real nightmare wasn't the cold. It was the darkness. For up to 120 days straight, the Arctic winter plunged Dinosaurs into near constant night. No sunlight, only icy winds, freezing blizzards, and pitch-black landscape. Imagine living in a place where the sun doesn't rise for months. This unique challenge is why paleontologists believe that Dinosaurs had to be fully feathered, using thick, insulating feathers to stay warm in those frigid, sunless conditions. Its ability to endure such a harsh environment is part of what makes it one of the most fascinating predators in prehistory. But surviving that kind of environment wasn't just about staying warm, it was about hunting. Pitch-black nights meant that if Dinosaurs wanted to eat, it had to hunt in total darkness, navigating snowstorms, blizzards, and freezing winds. This has led scientists to believe that its senses were far sharper than those of its warmer climate relative. It would have needed exceptional eyesight and an even better sense of smell to locate prey in these unforgiving conditions. And here's where it gets crazy. From the limited skull material that's been found, paleontologists think that Dinosaurs might have had one of the most powerful senses of smell of any dinosaur. How powerful, you ask? Well, researchers say that it may have even surpassed the legendary Tyrannosaurus rex. That's no small feat. For context, the T-Rex's sense of smell was so good that it's often compared to that of modern bloodhounds, the same dogs used to track missing people from miles away. If Dinosaurus' nose was even better than that, it could have sniffed out prey from several kilometers away. Even in below freezing weather, where cold air makes it harder to detect scent. Snowstorm, no problem. Wrong wind direction, didn't matter. If something died or bled nearby, Dinosaurs would know. But the Arctic's challenges didn't stop at dark and cold. This was a world of deep snow, slippery ice, and frozen ground. In this treacherous landscape, a predator that couldn't walk on snow might as well have been extinct. And while no fossilized feet or legs from Dinosaurs have been found, some scientists believe it must have had unique adaptations for walking on snow and ice. Perhaps it had specialized toes, stronger digits, or wider feet to prevent it from sinking into deep snow. Maybe its footpads had extra insulation to protect it from frostbite, similar to how wolves and foxes have fur-covered paws. It's all speculative for now, but evolving snowshoes for feet would have been a massive survival advantage. In the end, it's clear that Dinosaurs wasn't just a predator, it was a survivor. It braved blizzards, hunted in pitch-black darkness, sniffed out prey from miles away, and somehow thrived in a world that would freeze most animals to death. It didn't migrate. It didn't flee. It adapted, and for that reason, Dinosaurs remains one of the most fascinating dinosaurs ever to be discovered. Although the Arctic winters were undoubtedly harsh and unforgiving, life for the Dinosaurs wasn't all gloom and doom. In fact, when the brutal cold finally gave way to summer, it was like flipping the script on survival. While summer in the Arctic didn't mean tropical beaches, it did bring endless daylight and calmer weather, a complete reversal of the long, dark nights of winter. For months, the sun refused to set, casting a constant golden glow over the landscape. This extended period of light created a small but crucial window of opportunity for the creatures of the Arctic, and Dinosaurs made the most of it. The start of summer was a vital period for these dinosaurs. It's believed that egg laying was carefully timed to coincide with the arrival of the warmer month. This strategy gave younglings the best possible chance of survival, with abundant sunlight and slightly better weather increasing their odds of making it past those critical first few weeks. But the Dinosaurus wasn't alone in taking advantage of summer's blessing. Other animals, including herbivorous dinosaurs, migrated to the Arctic during this period to graze on the fresh vegetation. Unlike Dinosaurus, though, most of these visitors didn't stick around for the winter. They came, ate their fill, and left before the darkness returned. But here's where things get really interesting. Unlike most of the dinosaurs and animals in the region, Dinosaurs didn't just have a preferred spot to call home. In most ecosystems, certain species are found in specific environments. For example, Edmontosaurus tended to stay in the lush, coastal lowlands, while Tyrannosaurus was found in the upland region. But not Dinosaurus. This predator was everywhere. Fossil evidence shows that it had a presence across the entire Prince Creek Formation, from the coastlines to the uplands, making it one of the most widely distributed animals in the region. This ability to adapt and thrive in any environment showcases just how versatile and dangerous it really was. And if you think its range was impressive, wait until you hear about its competition. As it turns out, the Prince Creek Formation was practically packed with dinosaurs. The land was home to a surprising variety of creatures like Dromaeosaur, Griposaurus, Sauronitholest, Alaskacephala, Tyrannosaurus, Edmontosaurus, and even Ornithomosaurus, just to name a few. It was a literal dino melting pot, but the Prince Creek wasn't just about dinosaurs. There were plenty of non-dinosaur residents too, including ancient mammals like Simulodon and Gypsonychtha, along with various marsupials, mysterious ancient creatures like unicorns, and even over 60 species of trees that flourished during the summer months. But for all the life this region supported, there was one notable absence: cold-blooded animal. No crocs, no turtles, no lizards, and definitely no snake. The reason? These animals are ectothermed, meaning they rely on outside heat to regulate their body temperature. Without that warmth, they simply can't survive. And since the Arctic is one of the coldest places on Earth, it's pretty clear why reptiles didn't stand a chance. This gave Dinosaurs and other warm-blooded creatures a massive advantage, as they could generate their own body heat and outlast their cold-blooded counterparts. Now, let's talk about the food chain. Of all the animals in the Prince Creek Formation, Dinosaurs was at the absolute top. It wasn't just big, it was the biggest predator in the region, bar none. Sure, there were large herbivores like Tyrannosaurus and Edmontosaurus, but in terms of pure predatory dominance, there was nothing close. Its biggest rival was the Sauronitholest, but that's a bit of a joke when you consider the size difference. Sauronitholest was 140 times smaller than Dinosaurus, making it less of a threat and more of a light snack. What's even more curious is that most of the smaller predators in the region experience something called Arctic dwarfism. Typically, animals in cold environments evolve to be bigger like polar bears, but in the Prince Creek Formation, the opposite happened. Predators like Dromaeosaurs and Ornithomosaurs were found to be significantly smaller than their relatives in warmer regions. Why? Paleontologists believe it had something to do with limited food availability, as there may have been too many small predators competing for the same prey. But here's the twist: Dinosaurs didn't shrink. While everything else was downsizing, Dinosaurs stayed big. How? It had no competition. Thanks to its size, it could hunt and kill the largest prey in the region, like Tyrannosaurus and Edmontosaurus, prey that no other predator could touch. This meant it wasn't affected by the same food shortage that its smaller competitors faced. No competition, no problem. It remained a dominant force, standing at the top of the Arctic food chain as the undisputed king. But unfortunately, even kings fall. The reign of Dinosaurus was relatively short. Fossil records show that it existed between 70 to 68 million years ago, meaning it didn't live long enough to witness the end of the Cretaceous period, and ironically, it may have been for the best. The asteroid impact that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs would have hit it just as hard as the rest. But why was its reign so short? Did it go extinct naturally before the asteroid hit? That's one of the biggest mysteries surrounding Dinosaurs. Some paleontologists believe that its environment may have played a role in its downfall. Living in a place that was constantly shifting between summer and winter, light and dark, warm and freezing, could have been too much for even this tough tyrannosaur. Harsh environments like this are known for being unpredictable, with food sources disappearing and extreme weather wiping out population. But it's also possible that something entirely different, something we haven't yet discovered, led to its extinction. The lack of fully mature specimens only deepens the mystery. The good news, every new fossil discovery gives us more clues. The bad news, fossil hunting in the Arctic is one of the hardest jobs in paleontology. The ground is frozen solid for most of the year, making excavations slow, dangerous, and extremely expensive. But every time a new Dinosaurus bone is found, we get a little closer to understanding the story of the only polar tyrannosaur that ever lived. From the icy darkness of winter to the endless glow of Arctic summer, Dinosaurus didn't just survive, it ruled. It was an apex predator, a master of adaptation, and a true survivor of one of the harshest environments on Earth. And while many dinosaurs sought warmer, easier lives further south, Dinosaurus stayed behind, battling darkness, blizzards, and an unforgiving world. It may not have seen the asteroid coming, but it certainly made its mark on prehistory.